Hello and welcome to the ScatterVolt channel, and today let me show you how to build the best $600 gaming PC for 2022. Yeah, we're just gonna leave that there. Okay, so this is my favorite build of the year so far because it combines not only one of the best value processors, but also easily the best 1080p gaming GPU for under 300 bucks. So not only will this build not break the bank and give you some pretty good performance, but it's also gonna look kind of good too at the same time. So in today's build guide, I'll be showing you how to build this PC step by step, the parts going into it, how to install Windows, graphics card drivers, the expected gaming performance, and then my final thoughts on it. Oh yeah, and we're giving away this computer too. Details at the end of the video. So in order to begin building this computer, yes, here it is in all of its finished glory. I'll show you how to get to it in a very short amount of time. You will need a Phillips head screwdriver, a Phillips head 1 screwdriver, and an 8GB or bigger flash drive to have your Windows 10 bootable media device on. And last thing, every single PC part I'm going to be discussing throughout this tutorial, and what you see in here will be linked in the description below. Okay, so go ahead and start unboxing everything. Your CPU, your RAM, your CPU cooler, your M.2 SSD, and your motherboard like what I have here. In the box should come a Wi-Fi adapter like this. You will need this to connect to the internet. This right here is your motherboard manual. Definitely have this on hand. It'll tell you what to do. And then these baggies right here are miscellaneous cables and screws you don't need for this build, but you want to have on hand probably for later use. All right, so go ahead and take out your CPU. On the back side, there should be a triangle on one end of the processor on the back. There should be this little dot right here, and you're gonna wanna line it up with the triangle that is on here on the socket. This dictates the orientation of the processor to the motherboard. So go ahead and unlaunch that. Line it up like what it said on the socket, or more or less the name of the CPU should be legible, facing upright. Bring that down, clip that underneath, squish it in, and that's it, you're done. After installing your CPU, let's go ahead and install the RAM. So go ahead and unlatch these two slots, also known as slots B2 and A2. Then take your RAM. This will only go in one way because the notches are uneven. There you go. There you go. Next, let's grab our Phillips head 1 screwdriver. Let's go ahead and unscrew this. Okay, and take your M.2 heat shield out after unscrewing it. Don't forget to unpeel this. Set that aside for the moment. Then take your M.2 SSD, plug it in here. There we go, and you hear snap, like that. And now go ahead and put your M.2 heat shield back on, gently, screw that in. Hey, and there you go. Okay, let's backtrack for a little second. For our CPU, I went with the i3-10105F. This is one of the best budget CPUs on the market, or you can go with the 10100F, either is fine. And then for the motherboard choice, we're pairing up with a B560M Aorus Pro AX, along with 16 gigabytes of either 3200 megahertz or 3600 megahertz DDR4 RAM. And then finally for that M.2 SSD, that's gonna act as our main storage and boot drive. I just chose a 512 gigabyte M.2 SSD from Team Group that made me MP34, but you don't have to get that exact model. In fact, you don't have to grab this exact motherboard, you don't have to grab this exact RAM kit, you don't have to grab this exact M.2 SSD. As long as you get that i3-10105F and then a B560 motherboard, you're pretty much set for this build. Okay, the last thing we gotta do though to this motherboard is install our stock CPU cooler that came with our i3, and again, already has thermal paste. So we're gonna line it up with the 4 holes here on the motherboard, kind of line it up. And this is really simple. Just press one side in, hear a click, one side in, other side, other side. Okay, it looks like this CPU cooler is all the way on there. And the last thing we gotta do is plug in our CPU fan cable into this slot right here that says CPU fan on the motherboard. That way the fan runs on our CPU cooler. And we'll tuck that up and we are done with the motherboard, RAM, storage, and CPU cooler. Okay, so before you get excited and just chunk the motherboard into the PC case, we gotta turn it around and see what's in the backside. All right, in this baggie should contain all the screws we need to mount everything inside of this PC case, our PC case manual, and then some zip ties for some cable organization. And then here are all of our front IO cables, AKA our power button, reset button, front USBs, audio jacks. All of that is controlled by this, and this will all be plugged in into the motherboard. Where you might be wondering, we're gonna put all these cables onto the motherboard, again, can be found in the motherboard manual, but we'll get to that later. Okay, before you drop the motherboard into the PC case, make sure all the standoffs on the motherboard are covered by your PC case. So go ahead and count how many holes there are on your motherboard. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And right now in the case, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 standoffs. So we're missing 3. But luckily the holes that we need to plug in the remaining standoffs are in the PC case. So in the PC case, there are some standoffs like what you see on screen. We're gonna go ahead and plug up the holes on the PC case that match our motherboard. Starting with this one down here, and then this one up here, and then this last one right here. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 standoffs in the PC case to match the 8 standoff holes on our motherboard. Okay, and with all the standoffs done, let's go ahead and drop in the motherboard. Just kind of pushing right there. Make sure all the standoffs are lined up. And then using these screws that you see on screen, these slightly thinner ones, we'll go ahead and one by one start screwing these into the motherboard, but don't screw them in all the way entirely. Just go ahead and just make sure they make contact with the thread. We'll go ahead and tighten all these individually later. Okay, so all 8 screws are already in, but they're not tightened. So now we'll go ahead and choose one screw, tighten this in all the way, go to the opposite side of the motherboard from where the screw was where we last screwed in, tighten this screw in all the way, go to another corner, tighten this side in, and rinse and repeat. That way our motherboard has equal pressure on all sides of it. And this is just good for just the longevity of the motherboard, especially when you throw in some really heavy graphics cards that could almost bend it in some instances. All right, there you go. Okay, but before you sign off, don't forget your little case fan right here. Let's go ahead and plug that in and take care of it. There's a 4-pin connector right here next to the CPU power connector, and this will only go in one way. And there we go, you got that taken care of. Okay, and with the motherboard installed, let's go ahead and install our power supply. But first, don't forget about your Wi-Fi antenna from your motherboard box. So here at the back side of the PC case, there should be 2 little yellow screws. Put it in like this, set this on top, and that's it. Okay, so for our power supply, I've gone with the Thermaltake BM2 550 watt 80 plus bronze modular power supply. So as you can see here, we only have cables pre-attached for our motherboard and CPU power, but for say our graphics card and maybe any like hard drives or SSDs, we do have these additional ports here for any SATA devices. Now you don't have to get that exact power supply for this build, but I'll have it linked in the description nonetheless. But as long as you go with something that has 500 to 600 watts of power and is 80 plus bronze, you're mostly good. Although if you want to be future-proof for say RTX 4000, Radeon RX 7000, or any potentially big CPU upgrades in the future, maybe you want 700 watt power supplies at minimum. Okay, before you put in the power supply though, go ahead and open up your baggie here of additional cables, including your actual power supply cable that's gonna plug from the back of the power supply into your wall socket. That took me a minute. But here's a lot of cables that you don't need, like for, again, SATA powered devices, but the one that you will need is one of these that says PCIe. This is what's gonna power your graphics card from your power supply. So go ahead and stow this away somewhere, keep this power supply cable around somewhere, and yeah, let's go ahead and get to installing. So we're gonna go ahead and put the flat side of this in where it says PCIe connector. Again, this is for our graphics card because it says PCIe right around here. Then to install this, have the fan side facing down. We're gonna scooch this in. And then for the screws we're gonna use to screw this in, they'll look like this. They'll either come in the power supply box or in the PC case baggie of screws. So this is what the back side of the PC case should look like. You have your CPU power connector right here, motherboard power connector already hooked up to the power supply, then our PCIe power connector that we plugged into the power supply since it's a modular power supply, and then all these front IO cables we're gonna take of now. Okay, let's go ahead and knock out the HD audio connector, which is going to be on the bottom left of our motherboard, and this will only go in one way. There you go. Next, let's take care of the USB, and go ahead and plug it in where it says USB. This should be on the bottom middle of the motherboard. Now let's take care of the front I/O cables, like our power supply button and reset button. Now, the layout of this can be a little bit tricky for first-time builders, but make sure to refer to your motherboard manual. It'll show you the layout you need to follow for all of these individual pins, but they're gonna be here on the bottom right of the motherboard. All right, there you go. Lastly, let's take care of the USB 3.0 header, this big blue chunky boy here. This will also go in one way. There's a little notch here on the USB 3.0 connector, and there's a little notch here on the connector. It should only go in one way, like that. Now let's take care of our power connector, starting with the motherboard power connector. As you can see, there's a little notch right here, and there's a little ledge right here on the motherboard power connector. The two gotta meet, which means this will only go in one way, like that. Next is our CPU power connector, where on the power connector it says CPU, pretty straightforward. Again, there's a notch on the cable, and there's a little ledge on the connector. Should only go in one way, kind of like that. And lastly, keep your PCIe power connector on hand here inside the PC case. We'll go ahead and plug this into the graphics card next. Okay, so for our graphics card, we are going with the Radeon RX 6600. And now you may be asking, what about NVIDIA? Well, unfortunately, they don't have any good graphics card options right now for about $250 brand new. This is their cheapest option, the 3050, and it hasn't gone below $300. And even on a performance level, I already explored that in a recent video, and this 6600 is just simply a better value all around, no matter how green this graphics card is. Anyways, this model here we're using today is the Gigabyte Eagle version, which has 3 fans. Now, I made the mistake last build of pairing an MSI graphics card with a Gigabyte motherboard, but I won't be making that same mistake this time in this build. I think this should look really cool. And if you're wondering, like I said, I got this for $250 on Amazon. Like I said earlier, this is the thing that'll get you that really excellent 1080p gaming experience that's gonna be very bulletproof even going forward. Again, this is overclockable, has 8 gigabytes of GDDR6 memory, costs $250, and it's just simply unbeatable for the value. And better yet, it is one of the most power efficient graphics cards on the market. It is really nice for its price. For reference, that 3050 I was talking about earlier, it pulls more wattage than the 6600, yet it's still much slower. I'm telling you, 6600 is a very good card for the money. All right, make sure you take this little PCI slot tab off. And before you put it in the card, we gotta make room for it in the PC case. So I'm gonna go ahead and unscrew this little latch here so I can have access to the PCI covers. And then I'm gonna look here on the motherboard. Here's where it's gonna go. See, it's gonna go right here to this topmost slot. So I'm gonna go ahead and break this off. It's gonna take a little bit of effort, but you'll get it. All right, that's our spare PCI covers out of the way. Ooh, okay. So to plug this graphics card in, it's very simple. We're gonna line it up with the top slot. We're gonna see if we can bring it into the PC case. All right, it's lined up with the PCI slot, and with one hand, 2 fingers, make sure it's all the way in there. You should hear a click, and once you hear that, you are good. Before that though, go ahead and reuse the screws from your power supply, or find the same screws, for screwing in the graphics card into the PC case. There should be some holes right here you need to line up. You might, with one hand, need to kind of like guide the card into place. That's normal, just because these cards are kind of big. Got that one in, and let's get this top one. There you go. Close that latch up, tighten it back up. All right, and the final thing we gotta do, plug in the power to our graphics card. So, just like every other power connector you've seen up until this point, there's a little notch here on the power connector. It's gonna line up with the ledge here on the GPU power. And we're gonna line this up. Gotta get it in one nice, neat go. And there you have it. Okay, and with your Windows 10 bootable media device plugged into your computer through one of the front USB ports, let's go ahead and install Windows 10. So here I'm gonna go ahead and enter my VIP SCD key for my Windows 10 Pro key that I bought for about 17 bucks using my discount code VIP Scatter. Let me go ahead and enter that in. All right, it went through. Let's go ahead and accept license and terms, hit next, custom. There's our 500 gigabyte M.2 SSD, hit next, boop, and we are done. All right, here's part 2 of setting up Windows. Go ahead and get your country. Easy, don't need that. Well, to make this simpler, I'm just gonna click I don't have internet, even though I can connect to my own internet, which I'm not gonna do. Continue with limited setup. Doesn't matter, doesn't matter. Oh, heal up, yeah, okay, there we go. Doesn't matter, doesn't matter, doesn't matter, doesn't matter. To all of these, I go ahead and just say no, you don't need them. There are additional processes in the background you don't want, including this, not now. And there you have it. You should reach the Windows 10 home screen in a bit. With Windows officially installed, let's go ahead and get to those graphics card drivers, and this can be done pretty quickly. So all you have to do is type in Radeon drivers into your Google search engine or whatever search engine you want with whatever web browser you're using. Click on the topmost link that is from AMD.com, and here you can either click the auto detect option, but I just go ahead and manually choose the driver since we know we're using an RX 6600 in this build, so go ahead and select that. Click on the download now option for the Windows 10 drivers, let that run, hit install, and let your computer reboot. It should be very straightforward, but don't forget to spam the delete key on your keyboard or the F2 key to enter the BIOS whenever you restart your computer. That way you can go ahead and enable XMP for your RAM so it's running at its full advertised speed for that extra bit of performance. So with those graphics card drivers and enabling of the XMP profile on your RAM done, you are free to game with this $600 gaming PC. And with that, that is all that I have for this $600 gaming PC build for 2022. And yes, the giveaway details are gonna come up very soon. Stay a bit patient for those. They'll be coming, don't worry. Anyways, to talk about the build, I am really pleased with it. It's pretty much checked off all the boxes for what makes a really excellent budget gaming PC. It's firstly got the performance to be good enough at 1080p. It's got all the features you'd want, of course, to be a good gaming PC in its price range. And it's got some pretty good aesthetics while not compromising performance and airflow, especially with the Silverstone case that we used in this build guide. And I really think the i3 10105F or 10100F paired with an RX 6600 is an unbeatable combo for this budget of a gaming PC. That i3 is still gonna be kicking it for regular 1080p gaming, and paired up with the 6600, which is the best budget graphics card on the market, it's just a match made in heaven. And I definitely take this build over my previous $500 build because while it's more or less the same computer, the 6600 being brand new for $250 is such a step up over the RX 5500 XT. I just take this build over that one. Also, the case in this build just happened to be a lot better for around the same price of the last one. This Farah H1M from Silverstone not only has the looks, the build quality, the cooling performance, but it's also 60 bucks. And that's a rare combo to find nowadays, all while being in white. So this probably is the best budget PC case I've messed with so far in 2022. It's really impressive. I mean, this isn't even the final product. I'm gonna go ahead and throw in some custom cable mods, this custom CPU cooler, and maybe some RGB fans. But even just with it looking stock right now, it looks pretty clean. So once again, if you want to build this computer for yourself, I'll have all the links to all the parts that I used for this build guide linked in the description below. And now let's get to that giveaway. So if you'd like to have a chance of winning this $600 computer, then all you have to do is leave a comment on this video and give it a like. And I'll go ahead and announce the winner publicly 1 week from publishing this video on this date. So if there's any time before that where you think you're chosen the winner, then it's not me. If you're gonna get reached out to me, it's gonna be publicly and through this channel, not through some janky WhatsApp or Telegram account. Okay, and with that, that is all I gotta say for this video. If you've enjoyed what I've made so far, definitely consider subscribing to the ScatterVolt channel. And with all that said, thank you so much for watching, and this is the ScatterVolt channel signing out.